How can you tell whether you're really trans? It was a question I really struggled with, and yet there seemed to be no clear answer. My therapist simply told me that most people never question their gender at all, ever. So the fact that I did was proof enough to show that I was in fact trans. But I wasn't. My name is Zoe, and I'm a detransitioner. Looking back at old photos, nobody would have even thought I was a tomboy. Not only did I like dresses and jewelry, I was also shy and gentle. But I wasn't a typical girl. I struggled with social life for multiple reasons. I was a foreigner where I grew up. I had unusual interests, and I was a gifted kid. I skipped a few school years, meaning that I was always a fair bit younger than my peers. By the time I was in high school, I was depressed, self-harming, and thought I was ugly. I attempted suicide when I was 12. During my last few years at school, which I finished at age 14, I barely socialized at all. At university, even my belief in my intelligence was shattered. I had never been a hard worker, and the amount of effort I put in at school did not suffice anymore. I also lacked the maturity to work diligently, nor the life experience to push through difficulty. This is where I became an idealist. If I couldn't be acknowledged for my intellect, I would at least be acknowledged for my morality. I wanted to change the world, be a moral paragon. Social rights became an obsession for me. I had already decided to be a vegan at the age of 14, and my views only became more extreme in the following years. I was an environmentalist, a feminist, a socialist, and an LGBT advocate. That last one would become very important. Even though I had had crushes on boys when I was younger, there was a point where I decided I was a lesbian and pursued relationships with girls. I had a girlfriend for a while when I was 17, and even told her that I might transition, because I didn't quite feel like a girl. It wasn't that I disliked men. I simply had this idea in my head that if I was in a normal relationship, I'd somehow be unequal. I even remember saying that I could imagine being in a gay male relationship. Shortly after that relationship failed, I met a man and fell in love with him. His name was Ian, and he lived in a different country. Still, we spent every moment we could talking over the internet, and he engaged me in fascinating debates. I resisted a little at first, and felt quite uncomfortable with the idea, but eventually I bravely confessed my feelings, and we began dating. We talked about our thoughts of transitioning, and while I myself wasn't committed, he told me with certainty that he imagined that he would either commit suicide or transition one day. As the open-minded and tolerant person I believed myself to be, I was incredibly supportive. It also suited my self-image. I was more of a lesbian after all, and maybe I had just seen that he was actually a woman deep inside. My parents were unsupportive, but I believed them to be simply bigoted. My father asked me once what I would think of him if he suddenly started dressing as a woman, and I proudly told him I would encourage him. He couldn't respond to that, and I believed myself to be morally superior. I got a placement at a university near Ian, and escaped my previous life to live with him. I helped him transition too. I liked him the way he was, of course, but I truly believed it was the right thing. And yet, we were both mentally unstable and our lives were a mess. We were disorganized and often had bouts of severe depression and suicidal ideation. Ian did seem happier when he took a step towards his transition, but I didn't notice that it was a temporary thing, soon replaced by anguish over the steps yet to be taken. Truth be told, I probably wouldn't have transitioned if Ian hadn't been in my life. But thanks to him and the other trans people that inevitably came to be in our friend circle, I came to believe that transitioning could be a path to happiness. I wondered if all my socialization issues would vanish if I became a man. I was ugly as a girl, and I hated my body. Perhaps I would like myself if I was a man. After a bit of back and forth, I decided to transition, despite the protests of my parents. I was socially transitioned for a while before hormone treatment. When I started testosterone, I liked the immediate effects. I felt energetic and positive. It was around that time I met my mother for the first time in years. I had been avoiding her. Though she was cautious at first, she told me that I looked miserable, uncomfortable, and anxious. She pleaded with me. If I wanted to cut my hair and dress like a man, then fine. Who was she to judge? But altering my body went a step too far. Why could I not accept my natural self? I left bitter and angry that day. I thought she didn't accept me for who I was. And yet her words left a deep impact on me. After all, my life was a mess. Both Ian and I were mentally unwell, and we believed that our lives would start after transition. We delayed everything. We'd get married, get a job, and make something of ourselves once we were fully transitioned. Our lives were effectively on hold. I started to wonder whether I'd simply wanted to escape the depression, and after a while I started to dislike the changes to my body. My throat constantly hurt, and I struggled to speak loudly. Even then, it took months for me to reverse course. It felt humiliating to tell people that after all the conviction, all the insistence, and all of the shouting, that I'd been wrong. But the people around me responded with grace. My father was relieved that I'd stopped before any surgeries, and even my girlfriend told me that it was okay, and that I needed to follow my own path. Thankfully, I hadn't undergone too many changes, and while to this day some of them remain, I was able to reverse the most obvious ones. Eventually, I found a surgeon who had experience with women damaged by steroid abuse. He found that my vocal cords had grown abnormally and corrected the issue, mostly returning my voice to normal. He told me that without the surgery, I could have lost my voice entirely. Physical detransition, however, was only the first step. The true change came as my delusions shattered. I had already shifted quite a bit in my views on the world and was embarrassed by my teenage moral crusade. As I researched the trans phenomenon, I became increasingly disillusioned. Even though Ian had undergone the surgery, the step that was meant to complete everything, there was yet more that was missing, and nothing was improving. I had already sensed, though tried to deny, that the further the transition went, the less I had been attracted to my partner. I saw the duality of how he acted when he was in front of others, and how he let down his guard and acted like a typical guy when he was just around me. I could see how he was desperately trying to be someone he had never been. I realized that it was a charade, chasing a dream that wasn't possible. I had never seen a trans person truly happy and content with their lives. They would claim they were happy, of course, but at the same time say they suffered from depression, anxiety, and other mental issues. A lot of them were barely leaving their homes. I could no longer see transition as anything other than a coping mechanism. I was fully prepared to give up my life with Ian when I told him that I couldn't take it any longer. I didn't expect him to give up his identity and detransition, even though I did offer it to him as a solution. I still cared, but I had always loved the boy that I had met all these years ago, not the girl he had been trying to become. Instead of leaving me, he broke down crying. He told me that he knew somewhere deep down that he had made a mistake, that he had simply been trying to be loved. In the darkness of this moment, I saw a glimmer of hope and decided that it was worth fighting for this relationship. I promised that I would stay at his side as he detransitioned, come what may, and resolved to help make things right. One might wonder whether I had forced him to give up his happiness for me, but in truth I feel as if I was responsible for his transition in the first place. I encouraged him, and looking back, there were instances where he doubted, where I could have stopped him, but I didn't, because I believed in the fantasy. I felt immense guilt for the damage that I had caused through the convictions I held. The belief that I was doing something good had led me to harm someone I loved dearly. It took me a long time to forgive myself, just as it took a long time to move on from the damage that transitioning had done to us.
But once we abandoned it, all the effort that had went into passing and changing the body could be productively channeled into improving our lives.
If I was to go back and tell my younger self something, it would be that identity is not as simple as a change of name. It has much more to do with the relationship you forge with others and your role in society. You cannot escape reality. Transition didn't fix any of the problems we had in life. Actions ultimately did. Last year, 12 years after meeting each other, Ian and I finally got married, officially under the names we had been given at birth, and with the blessing of all our family. Even with everything that happened, there is still a future out there for us. Many thanks to Genspect for allowing my voice to be heard. If you wish to see Ian's story, he already told his side in his own words in this video. Thank you.